What's going on, everybody? This is John J Gaming on the mic here, coming at you with a brand new episode of the Coach Grossman Dynasty here on NCAA 14, featuring that college football revamp. And we got a good episode in store for you guys here. We got not only, the offseason recap, but we also got some highlights of the national championship game as well. So you're going to want to tune in for this one. Make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button as well if you do happen to be brand new to the channel, as we check out one of your custom prospects, Malachi Hill, with a big interception. And how about this to get things going here early? First drive of the game, and Malachi Hill in his final collegiate game has already picked off Terrence Brown and helping Iowa State take an early lead here. They're going to be up 13-3 so far in this one, as they've been doing a surprisingly really good job of maintaining discipline against the Miami offense, which is a very explosive group, particularly their passing game, but really haven't been able to do much of anything, as Malachi Hill almost had a second pick there, but he drops it. Oh, if he was able to haul that in there. He actually had a lot of space to really work with as well, and it just didn't end up happening for us. Matter of fact, we had a chance to pick it off there too, but we'll just have to settle for a TFL. But the Hawkeyes have themselves a really big advantage here early, as they're now up 34-3, and it's only going to get a little bit worse as we see another interception, not by Malachi Hill, but it's Joel Fulton who will get the interception. And that actually does end up leading to yet another Iowa State touchdown. So up really big early, still up by 38. But eventually we're going to give up a touchdown, as Malachi Hill does end up getting caught in the backfield. Looking in the eyes of the backfield, and A.J. Russell, know that no one was really covering him. He's going to continue to expand his school record that he has in a single season. That is his 97th catch of the entire season so far. And it took a little while, but the Miami Hurricanes do end up scoring a touchdown. But Malachi does make up for it, though. He gets his second interception. Really just doing a great job of just baiting defenders. He is one of the most explosive players in college football. He has 98 speed, so surely there will be somebody that gives him a look as like a special return player. Maybe not for his defense, as he gets beat downfield, and it's simply a perfect throw to A.J. Russell. I mean, what are you going to do about that? That is just a really difficult throw to make. Had to be perfect, and honestly, it was, man. Nothing you could really do about it. 41-17 advantage, though, for Iowa State, as we will see him trying to go deep once again. But this time, Malachi does end up leaping far enough to where he does end up getting that second deflection in the air. And sure enough, Iowa State is going to actually win the national championship. We do not get the play of the game, and honestly, didn't see a lot of highlights for Malachi Hill in this one, but he was doing his job as a corner. He really shut things down on one side of the field, and when you only have two tackles, you had a really good day as a cornerback. And not only does Iowa State win the national championship, but also Malachi Hill, in his final collegiate game, ends up turning in a pretty good performance. Now, the stats don't show that much outside of what he obviously did in the turnover margin, but 2 tackles, did end up with a TFL, 2 interceptions, but he also had 2 pass deflections. That's basically dropped interceptions in my book. So this man could have easily had 4 catches if his hands weren't made of butter. But that being said, Malachi Hill did turn in an extremely productive performance at the national championship game. But as for your Oklahoma Sooners, well, this was certainly a season for us to go ahead and remember, as we saw some school records broken. Antonio Dunn ends up setting the single season record for most rushing touchdowns in a year with 25. And that was actually the only school record that I got. It was setting up in a way to get a little bit more than that, but we will end up finishing number 2 in the nation in the final poll. Iowa State will end up finishing number 1 in the nation, and definitely well deserved. Thought we had a really great season, specifically compared to what Lincoln Riley's final year was when they went 5-7. But this was a difficult schedule, don't get me wrong. I mean, we played 2, 3, 4, at least 4 ranked opponents, actually 7 ranked opponents on this schedule, and almost, if it wasn't a ranked opponent, I mean, we at least went up against, for the most part, with a few exceptions, teams that did end up going to a bowl game. And for the most part, we did a really good job of going out there and really proving that we belong. That Mississippi State game did end up costing us. We could have went to the national championship, but that just didn't happen for us. It was not necessarily in the cards, So, I mean, it is what it is, but a really great season for us overall, nonetheless. Now, looking at the final season stats here for our guys, and Maurice Royal had a good season overall. Over 4,000 yards passing, 28 touchdowns. Did have those 18 interceptions, but there would be games where, he'll be really good with the football, doesn't turn the ball over, and then he would have like the occasional 3-4 interception game. Just kind of goes to the territory of being a gunslinger. But besides the interceptions, everything else is an improvement from last season. Also saw a little bit of Ed Marshall as well. On the ground, Antonio Dunn does not reach that 2,000 yard milestone. I know some of you were thinking about that in the comments, but a really good year nonetheless. 1,850 yards, 25 touchdowns on the ground. A huge step up from the previous season. And then, not to mention, also chipped in with 26 catches and 164 yards on the ground, through the air as well, through receiving. And shoot, even came around and threw a pass, right? Like, first pass that he threw. Granted, it was an interception, but hey, it is what it is, though. Jeremy Givens looks pretty good in limited action. 342 yards and 3 touchdowns. Maurice Royal ended up with double-digit touchdowns. And then Sean Albert and Brett Parker did also find the end zone, in addition to Melvin Dottie as well. As for the receivers, we did not have any receivers equip 1,000 yards, but it was a very well-balanced attack. 3 receivers over 700 yards. Brett Parker led the way with 890 yards and 7 touchdowns, followed by Aaron Atkins with 861 and Sean Albert with over 700 yards receiving as well. Dan Romero was in 4th place. He was a little bit of a forgotten man, which is really interesting to say because he is a 99 overall guy, but he should be in the NFL nonetheless. Same thing could potentially be said for Jeremy Tate down the road. And Drew Myers ended up with 366 yards and 5 touchdowns. Finally, Nick Andrews, who we didn't even see a lot of Nick Andrews. He ended up with multiple touchdowns. And then Brad Means, the true freshman, played sparingly but did also find the end zone. Now, one thing that I didn't really talk about much this year was our offensive line. I kind of glance over it whenever I go through individual stats every game. But offensive line, for the most part, did a really good job. Did not really allow a lot of sacks, and we do have at least a couple of these offensive linemen coming back for next season, as well as some younger guys that are ready to go ahead and step in. So I like how the offensive line is going to be looking moving into next year. And then on the defensive side of football, Eric Gunn, multi-award winner, almost with 100 total tackles in this one. He ended up with 97 tackles. Followed that up with Nate Parks. He ended up with 91. He was always like an extra man in the box. Definitely assisted in making sure not a lot was happening in the box this season. Of course, you can't forget about Marcus Johnson-Ivor, who just had a really great freshman year. But keep in mind, this is his first season on the football field, right? So that's something to really keep in mind. He ends up with 60 total tackles, 36 TFLs, and 14 sacks in this one. Akeem Lewis wasn't too far behind. Ivor ended up with 34 tackles, 12 TFLs, and 8 sacks in the year. And then 2 other guys with 5 sacks. Matt Berg and Matt Mays as well, ending up with 5 sacks. Crazy thing, though, is when it comes to turnovers, we actually didn't force a ton of turnovers. We were kind of a more fundamentally sound defense, didn't really allow a lot of points per se. But that being said, we did see multiple interceptions this season from Eric Gunn, Matt Ratliff, and then Justin Kelly also had multiple picks. Nate Parks, Paul Webb, Barry Form, who we used that interception, by the way. I know that for sure. And then Nick Alexander all ended up with getting a hands on the football at some point of the year as well. But definitely a ton of pass deflections. Did not catch a lot of our picks. So we could have had more turnovers, but we just didn't have the hands like that. But we did also force some fumbles. Marcus Johnson led the way in that. Ended up with 2 forced fumbles. That leads everyone on the team, but did not get a lot of fumble recoveries. Those are 50-50 balls in my books, and it just didn't necessarily happen. But you know, a good year for our defense. I really cannot complain at the end of the day, and I'm really interested to see how we can go from here. We were really close to a national championship, and take away that Mississippi State game, I think we would be talking about this team winning a national title this year. They were that talented across the board. Now, in a year in which we did go ahead and see as much success as we did, we do end up losing both of our coordinators. So we now have Rob Smith as our new defensive coordinator, and then Charles Huff is going to be our new offensive coordinator. So we'll see where they came from. So Charles Huff was actually the former head coach of NC State, and he ends up getting fired from that program after he went just 5-19 in his last 2 seasons. No bowl appearance to go with it, so they gave him the axe under those circumstances. As for Rob Smith, we do also get a former head coach as well, as he was the head coach for UCLA, also getting fired as well, and for good reason. Last 3 seasons, 2-10, 3-9, 4-8, gonna end up getting him fired under those circumstances. So we got a couple former head coaches in the building because of our success here at Oklahoma. Now, as for where our previous assistant coaches ended up going, we did end up seeing Eric Chin, defensive coordinator. He ends up taking the head coaching job at Western Kentucky and taking over a relatively stable program. I mean, since this series has started, they have been a consistent 6-8 win team every single season. So definitely a good head coaching hire. It's his first head coaching job, so we wish him the best of luck at Eastern Kentucky. As for Josh Gannis, he is actually going to be the person that's going to be taking over the head coaching job at NC State. So we got that to look forward to as well. NC State, that's where, ironically, one of our coordinators came from. So a little bit of a trade there. Oklahoma assistant going to NC State in order to, get his head coaching opportunity as well. Now, unsurprisingly, we do also have quite a few players leaving for the NFL, including 3 projected first-round picks. Nate Parks, Dan Romero, and Brett Parker are projected in the first round, but we also have guys like Akeem Lewis and Drew Myers, plus Brandon Roos, who are projected to be day 2 picks. And then towards the back of the draft, we do also have Michael Brown and Jermaine Owens as NFL caliber players as well. Aaron Atkins is declaring, but he's a 6th round pick, and honestly, unless you're like a 1st, 2nd, or 3rd round pick, it would not be realistic for you to go to the NFL at this point. At least it would be better to stay in school and finish up your degree. So we're going to get him to stay, but Todd Brown, though, is a different story. He actually wants to leave. He wants to transfer to South Carolina, and he doesn't feel like he's going to see the field here. So he is actually going to confirm his transfer into the transfer portal, going to the University of South Carolina. Now, taking a look around of the NCAA with your custom prospects, we do have some players graduating, going to the NFL, and dare I say it, even enter that transfer portal. We first and foremost got Cruz Wakefield. He is going to be graduating but not going to the NFL from the University of Alabama. At Appalachian State, John Ross, who had that 1 year as the starting quarterback, he will also graduate and not go to the NFL. In addition, we see Jonathan Falzon. He is going to graduate. He played his last down of football, at least at the collegiate level. He will not be drafted in the NFL draft either. Same thing could be said for Malachi Hill. Despite the 2 interception game that he had in the national championship, he will not get any NFL looks. And that can also be said for Chris Hill. He will be graduating, gets his diploma, but not an NFL shot. Speaking of custom prospects that aren't going to the NFL, Bear Footlock, he had a short tenure at NC State, but he does end up graduating after 4 years, 4 solid years of football. Matter of fact, he ends up amassing 3,000 yards of rushing and 28 touchdowns, but it is not enough. He will not be going into the NFL draft. Neither will Daniel Parcell, but he at least ends his collegiate career on a high note, does end up going as a 1,000-yard rusher. One custom prospect that is going to declare for the NFL draft, though, is Donnie Watson. He is currently projected as a 5th-round pick, and it seems like he is dead set on leaving the University of Tennessee, doing so, putting together 2 consecutive 1,500-yard seasons. So, he's done what he could do here. It was a slow start after a couple years, didn't really see the field much, but once he got his chance, man, he really did go ahead and take the most out of his opportunity. On the other hand, we do actually have a couple of custom players that are going to be entering in the transfer portal, one of which is going to be Jesus Rodriguez, who originally committed to the University of Texas, but after his freshman year getting redshirted, he is actually going to the transfer portal, and he is moving over to the University of Colorado. Also frustrated with not seeing much playing time early on, John Gordon is also going to enter his name in the transfer portal. He played sparingly in his freshman year, sitting behind Mitch Steele, but he is actually going to end up transferring to the University of Virginia, moving themselves over to the ACC. So that is it for guys, or at least an update on custom prospects, at least those that are graduating, going to the NFL, or moving into the transfer portal. If you want to see if you currently have a custom prospect in this dynasty, I will have a Google Sheet link down in the description for you, or not in the description, but in the comment section as a pinned comment for you to check out. Of course, you can also just ask me how your custom prospect did, and I can just tell you if you're too lazy to go ahead and read that Google Sheet. So that does take us into the recruiting portion of the offseason recap, and right now we do have 8 different scholarships that we do have to work with. That being said, though, I know we need to get a tight end. That is something that I want to go after, but I really want to go after quality over quantity, right? So I'm not going to be using all of the 8 scholarships that we have to offer, with the exception of having to go for one of these tight ends, because we do need to fill that tight end's position. The last thing I want to do is go ahead and have a walk-on at the tight end position. Is something that I want to do. So I'm going to figure out where I want to put my recruiting points, and then I will get back to you guys in terms of what I'm ending up doing with my recruiting points. Alright boys, so what I ended up deciding to do here is I'm going to key in on 3 different players here for the offseason, or at least with this signing day, this offseason recruiting. First guy I'm going after is Mike Day. He is a 5-star guy in the state of Oklahoma, so it's important that I wanted to go ahead and keep him in state. I'm putting in 5,300 towards him because Kansas State does also want him. He does have an athletic scholarship from Kansas State, so I put the most points into him. Another player that I'm also trying to go after is Craig Young. He is also a 5-star prospect from Berea, Ohio. He's the 12th ranked athlete in this recruiting class. He's a very good athlete, man. I love what he brings to the table. 93 speed, And right now we are slightly behind. We are trailing Ohio State. They are currently the slight favorites, but I do believe that we can sneak in there and also try to get him to come to Oklahoma instead, because I love the speed that he has to go with it. And then finally, for what I wanted to do in terms of the tight end position, I am going to target Rick Allen. He's a decent player, 6'8" overall, not the kind of player that I wanted to bring to Oklahoma, but this is at least better than, say, bringing in a walk-on at the position. Does have some solid athletic traits, not really that good in terms of catching the football, so a little bit more of a raw athlete that will probably need to redshirt if we are able to redshirt him. Only other person that has a scholarship offer from is Iowa State, which kind of makes sense because I believe he is from Iowa. Yes, he is. So as for some of these other players, man, I can't put points into them because I can only put my priorities into so many people. If some of these other players want to go to Oklahoma, I would totally appreciate it. But with that being said, I will see you guys at signing day to see what ends up going down. Okay guys, so the signing day actually does not go as well as I wanted it to whatsoever. While we did end up getting Rick Allen, we do not secure either Mike Day or Craig Young. And we did put like a considerable amount of points on those two guys, but despite that, we did end up signing a top 5 class. We ended up filling our team needs, and we do end up signing 6 prospects here on signing day, but I'm actually really curious to see what ended up happening with the two guys that we were really trying to put the full court press on. So Craig Young, we actually lose out on him by 1,300 points about, so that's a little bit of a tough pill to swallow. We did not put enough points, and Ohio State definitely made him a priority. And look at this, even though we put over 5,000 points into Mike Day, we still lose by 3,300 points. So Kansas State, I'm pretty sure they put almost everything into getting Mike Day, and sure enough, they did end up getting him, man. So hey, if they really wanted him that bad, congrats to him. I'm sure Mike Day is going to be a fantastic player in the collegiate level, and the same thing probably could be said for Craig Young as well. As for our final recruiting class ranking, honestly, we put together a really good class. We ended up signing 23 guys in this one, 2 5-stars, 8 4-star players as well. We're number 5 in the class, and we end up finishing with the second best class in the conference, only to Florida, who does end up signing the number 1 class in college football, so no shame in that. We should have a recruiting class that will put us in a position to where we can still compete at an extremely high level. But this takes us to the position changes, where we go ahead and try to figure out where to best place guys for the upcoming season. Starting with our athletes, of course, we're going to start with Willie Lewis, and Lewis might be a really good running back, man. He looks like an 80 overall kind of guy, so I'm going to place him at running back because he's just built like that, We don't really have any elite running backs in this last recruiting class. Marcus Hayden was a bust, it turns out, so Willie Lewis being in that running back, he can be the starting tailback of the future for Oklahoma. As for the other athlete, though, Troy Noble, he is a 3-star athlete that we ended up signing as well. And looks like Troy Noble is more of a offensive lineman. Looks like he'll be in like the low 70s, which, I'll definitely take that. I have absolutely no problem with that whatsoever. But let me figure out what other changes that I wanted to make. Okay, so one thing that I missed during the signing day was where Emmy Husky Jr. And I don't know how we ended up doing this, but last time I checked, they were in a recruiting battle between Michigan and Notre Dame. And he ends up signing with us, bro. Like, that is absolutely insane. So, he'll be a really good wide receiver moving forward. I actually did not realize that until now. So that's really interesting. So I'm excited to see how that ends up turning out for him as, his collegiate career unfolds. Welcome to the squad, man. I have no problems with that whatsoever. So one thing that I did decide to do is gonna take Troy Noble and move him over to right guard. And the reason that I am doing that, even though it's a -3 DOP, there was nobody behind Tim Jones, and I wanted to go ahead and make sure there was somebody at least behind him. So wouldn't be surprising if, say, Troy Noble does end up getting at least some sparing amount of playing time early in his collegiate career because of that. Now, as for the defensive side of the football, one move that I am going to make is I'm going to move James McGee from defensive tackle, and I'm going to move him over to right end. Even though it is a significant jump, he'll get, I think, a little bit more chance to get a little bit more playing time, just because Brent Thomas does have things locked down, and want to give these younger guys a chance to step up. Plus, I only have a couple of defensive linemen here, so Marcus Johnson and then Mike Morrow were the only two players over here. Young players for sure, but I wanted to make sure to shore up the depth a little bit over on that side of the defensive line, making sure that, you know, we're keeping guys fresh as the season goes on. As for the linebacker position, I wish I could do a little bit more at linebacker. It's still something that I do need to recruit going forward, but we did end up signing quite a few defensive backs, so I am really happy with that. One move that I am going to make is I am actually going to move Sean Hall, and I'm going to move Sean Hall over to that strong safety position because Matt Ratliff will have things locked down here. I'm going to move him there so that he might have a little bit better of a chance, at least get some honest competition, see if he can overtake either Tyrell Brooker or Nick Alexander. Either way, he's a quality safety, and we're happy to have him on the team. So this takes us to the training results for us. We do have a 99. Matt Ratliff will be our 99 overall guy. He is our best player on the team. But we got some great talent on this roster, of course. I mean, the wide receiver room is still going to be absolutely electric. I mean, just look at this wide receiver room. Like, top 4 guys are in the 90s. Sean Albert's a 98. He's our top dog. But we also have Aaron Atkins, who's a 96. Jeremy Tate, who's a 92. And then Nick Andrews, who's a 91 as well. Plus, you know, you got Brad Means, who's going to be really good in the future, as well as Jason Mack and Tim Bobor. So still a really good wide receiver core that I'm still extremely excited about. As for the rest of the room, we do have Maurice Royal, who is a 98 overall, with Sawyer Thompson at a 78. So he'll at least have a chance to be that backup. I don't know if it will be high enough for him to be, you know, higher than those other Oklahoma quarterbacks that we did bring in, but he should be at least the first string, if not the backup. Running backs will have Jeremy Givens this year. He's a 90 overall, but then Andrew Smith gave him a good push. He almost overtakes Jeremy Givens, but he'll be our backup tailback. He'll have what Givens' role was last year. Fullback, we have Ryan Gordon, who's a 91, so that's really good. Tight end, we'll have Terry Cotton as our starter this year. He's an 88. Then the offensive line, it's going to be a younger offensive line, but that being said, still some talent here. Michael Baker's an 87. Sam Martin is an 88 overall. Center is going to be a true freshman. Tim Jones is a 90. And then Bill Olsen is an 86 overall. So a younger offensive line, but some guys that can definitely play college football and can be pros at the NFL level one day or another. Defensive side of the ball, Mac Bird's in the 90s. Marcus Johnson, not in the 90s, but he definitely plays like it if y'all saw what he did last year. Brett Thomas is our starter in that 3-4. He's going to be a 96. Meanwhile, for the linebacking core, Matt Mays, Eric Gunn, and then TJ Bailey is going to be, you know, heavily featured in this defense. Should see some Ben Livingston as well, and maybe even a little bit of Bjorn Ironside as well. He was redshirted this past season, and we might see him a little bit over the course of the year playing in that backup role. Over at the cornerback position, we'll have one elite corner in Cedric Bailey, followed by Eric Smith. And then, of course, I already talked about Matt Ratliff, but Nick Alexander's on the opposite side. He's no slouch either at that 92. Finally, our punter, Mark Williams, he's an 85. We will have a young special teams unit in terms of our kicker and punter. And this is actually what our roster is going to be. We actually don't need to make any cuts because we are actually below that 70 player threshold. So we're going to be carrying this season, with 68 guys, not our roster limit, but it's still a talented roster, and I'm excited to see, what this football team is capable of doing. We'll see if we can make a run at a national championship this year. I think we have what it takes. So this does take us into the preseason, where we've got to figure out who we're going to redshirt, and then of course we need to also look at what our schedule is going to be looking like moving into year number 7. And it's going to be a really interesting time to be alive, I'll tell you what. But we will start at that quarterback position, and I am going to redshirt Jared Foster. He could very well be the future of this program, but in the meantime, I am going to redshirt him so that we can see what we also have in Sawyer Thompson if in any event where either Maurice Royal does end up getting hurt, or it's a blowout in either direction, and putting Sawyer Thompson in over the course of, garbage time, just to see what we have in our custom recruit at quarterback. At the running back position, I am going to redshirt both running backs as well. They're both buried on the depth chart. So Willie Lewis and Marcus Hayden, you are not going to be really seeing the field that much, at least for a little bit. So they're going to get redshirted for that. Over on the defensive side of the football, I am also going to redshirt Luke Walker because he's going to be the 4th string defensive tackle. I mean, between Mark Hall, Tony Estes, and Brent Thomas, they're going to have things locked down at least for the time being. And then at corner, the last redshirt that I am going to make is Brett Lewis. And this is pretty straightforward, simply because he is not going to be ready to play college football just yet. If we had more than 70 players, he probably would have been one of the first players to be cut, to be brutally honest. But we're going to at least redshirt him, give him a chance to be successful. He's just not ready to see the field this upcoming season. And we will, of course, have an A+ strength of schedule this upcoming season. And it really starts from the get-go. First and foremost, we got to start taking on Alabama, who is in the preseason top 25. Speaking of preseason top 25, look at us. We are a preseason #1 team in the country, but man, we are going to be tested early on. I mean, we got Alabama, Arkansas, who's not ranked, but they're a decent football team. We got 2 road games in a row, number 6 Kentucky, number 25 Alabama, home game versus Tennessee, and a non-conference matchup versus North Carolina. They're number 12 in the nation. There's a couple of custom guys over there. We will have a couple of road games, though. We got number 23 Texas, probably our only cupcake this year, in Kansas. They are on our schedule. We blew them out last year. Hopefully we can do the same thing this time on the road. And then, of course, doesn't get much easier. Last few games, we got number 17 Ole Miss, number 8 Texas A&M, Missouri, a rivalry game, and then Oklahoma State, which is also a rivalry game. They had a pretty good year last year as well. But with that being said, guys, that is going to wrap things up for the off-season recap for this year. I hope you guys are excited for year number 7. And I want to thank you guys from the bottom of my heart for supporting this series. It's really been a fun one, per se, to see Coach Grossman work up the ranks. Now, if you also made it this far in the video, this is also where I go ahead and explain how you could have a custom prospect in this particular series. I will have a template down in the comment section. It will be one of the comments that I put out, probably a pinned comment, along with the Google Sheets doc as well, for those of you that do already have a custom player in this series. So how it's going to work, you fill out that template, and then I will create your player as either a high school senior or a JUCO person, depending on what you want to do there. But that being said, I will let you to that so that you can fill that out in my comment section. But in the meantime, though, if you enjoyed today's content, I need you guys to do me a really big favor. Smash that like button for me, hit me up down in the comments, of course, and then shoot, if you're brand new to the channel, hit that subscribe button for me. It really helps the channel out. I would truly appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. But with that being said, this is John Jake Gaming on the mic signing off. I'm hoping you're all out there having a good one. Take care, everybody.